Welcome to the Gospel Road. We're going to look at Ephesians 4 today. It says, I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with peace, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There's one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope that belongs to your call. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. But grace was given to each of us according to the measure of Christ's gifts. Therefore, it says, when he ascended on high, he led a host of captives and he gave gifts to men. In saying he ascended, what does it mean but that he also descended into the lower regions of the earth? He who descended is the one who also ascended far above all the heavens, that he might fill all things. And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and teachers to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried away by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love. Now, this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them. Due to their hardness of heart, they have become callous and have given themselves up to sensuality, greedy to practice every kind of impurity. But that is not the way you learn Christ, assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him as the truth is in Jesus, to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness, the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, put away falsehood. Let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with your own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up and fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. Ephesians 4 is what we looked at today. It's talking about anger. It's talking about love. It's, talking about patience, being there for each other, helping one another out. And a lot of times we do fall into that anger thing rather easily. And then we end up going to bed angry and then waking up angry. We know how we all deal with it, right? And we seem to be in a world right now, and dealing with family or even at work, that there's a lot of anger out there that we have to see and hear and feel every day. Now, again, I'm not going to say this is new, because if they're talking about this 2,000 years ago and we're still dealing with it now, yet again, we have no idea what we're doing. because we're still dealing with the same thing. It hasn't gotten better. We're still doing the same thing that we did then. Isn't that crazy? It's just like dealing with people. You never know what they're going through or what's happening. It kind of reminds me this past week, I was with a friend and we were at the cigar lounge having a cigar. And a gentleman walked in and he had a suit on. Of course, he hadn't had a suit on for a while. He used to, be in public office and he's not anymore. He decided not to run, but he actually owns the cigar shop. And we hadn't seen him in a suit for a while. So, of course, everything starts coming out of, so did you have to go to court? You back into public office again? One thing we didn't say was, a funeral, which a lot of times that's what people say when you see someone in a suit, which happened to be what he was dealing with that day. He was, attending a funeral of someone that he knew, and actually someone who was a regular at the club. And so there were a few others that would have been dealing with that as well. And again, never put a idea on somebody. Assume, because you don't know what they're going to be dealing with. You don't know what they're going through. It's kind of crazy. And, a couple other things I was even looking at this week, because we're not sure how we've programmed or how we've kind of prepared ourselves for things, or what we're watching that's kind of like planting seeds in our minds of how we're going to act and react, even in our lives, and how we're going to figure out how we're going to overcome things. We're all learning, we're all training, we're all trying to be that better person. You get that job and you're trying to learn how to do that job. Well, it was interesting because, again, this is the point of view how all of us look at things differently. I ran across a video, it was on TikTok. I'm not sure who the gentleman was. I don't know if he was just a speaker or if he was a pastor, evangelist. I have no idea. But he was talking about superheroes. And he was saying how he dislikes superhero movies and superhero shows, which was interesting because through my life, usually you hear about that because, you're a person who got a power and you're able to overcome some things that you're dealing with. But it was interesting listening to his point of view too, because he was talking about looking at the superheroes. Usually it was a poor person. So he's like, they're programming you to, live poor because that's what a superhero does. They're poor. But then, of course, everybody brings up, Batman, Iron Man, things like that. But Batman, superhero, but has no powers. He is rich. But then again, doesn't always get along with another person. Very angry, very bitter because of what he's been dealing with. Iron Man, again, rich, no superpowers, but he's using technology to keep himself alive and to build the suits, but very narcissistic, very much of a user. Would use just step on anyone to get to what he needs, where he needs to go in life as he's moving up that ladder, and with no disregard, right? But the thing is, I can see both sides of this. And it depends on which way you look at it and which way you're going to use it for your life. Because in my mind, again, you're seeing a lot of these people, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, orphan, poor kid, Batman, orphan, rich man. Okay. Again, lots of orphans dealing with this, but they were able to have something that was given to them that they could turn their life around and be something, have a purpose, to be a better person, to do better things in life. How are you going to look at that point of view? That's why I say whenever I read these every week or when I do these, to always read it for yourself, because our point of view and where we are in our lives are going to be completely different on how we're dealing with that. I mean, like right now, the current year we're in, 2024, things are going to change because I keep talking about the baby boomers and how they're getting ready to retire. In fact, what I was just reading this morning is that this is going to be one of the bigger years for baby boomers retiring. They're talking, I think it's over 4 million. I think they're saying it's about 11,000 birthdays a day of people turning 65, which means now they're going to be retiring here in the next couple of years. When you look through the baby boomers, the last ones are going to turn 65 in, I believe, 2029, which means 2030 is when some of them, because some will retire when they're able to with Social Security, some will work through until they're 70. So we're going to see an influx of retirement over the next 5 years of those 4 million that are turning 65. And then in 2030 to 2029, another 5 years that we'll see the back end of the baby boomers retiring. And now, so we're talking 11,000 people a day, 4 million people. We need 4 million people to replace what's happening with that, which are they going to replace? Or does that mean more work for people because they're not going to have the bodies in there to do the job that needs to be done? See, lots of things that we need to really think about and how we're going to react or how we're going to do with that. And again, are we going to be proactive thinking about this, being ready for it, or is it going to turn into more of a reaction because of what's going to happen, which seems to happen more often than not? Because they always talk about strategic planning, but for whatever reasons, people just seem to not be able to get planned and they get frustrated, they get angry, they get fed up, and then they just start stomping. Hmm. Now, lots of things to think about, lots of things that are changing. And of course, we're always changing anyway, but we're in a world now where many things are changing for us in this time. I mean, again, you get into certain eras, there's always something that's going to change something in life that kind of changes the way we think, changes the way the world is acting. And, one of our things is the pandemic, which just happened a few years ago. That changed things. Going back before of something I remember of 9/11, that changed things. Again, Vietnam War, Korean War, World War II. I mean, there's always something that's happening that is causing a shift in how we are doing things in life, a shift in the world and how the world, the Industrial Revolution around the turn of the century. Some countries are just getting into that. So it's changing how they're having to deal with stuff and how they're planning. We're dealing with all this technology, cell phones and computers and tablets, the internet, things that, social media, again, something new. It's changing how we're doing things. It's changing how things are going to be done. How are you going to deal with that? How are you going to react to that? How are you going to prepare yourself to be ready for that when those changes happen? Do you try and learn to keep yourself up on the changes, which is not going to be easy because there's so many all the time? Or are you just kind of like the old stick in the mud that says it's always been like this, it's been this way, so it's always back in my day type of thing? You know, it was funny because you they always talk about the millennials, the younger ones that have actually dealt with technology from almost birth growing up because it's in computer, had to deal with the school. They were using laptops and things like this, which is something I didn't have growing up. I mean, we had computer labs, but we didn't get to use them you had computer class to use that. But then a lot of times they're getting to the point of when they're graduating and they're getting into the work life. And it's funny because I've worked with some and they are not the most technology savvy like you would think they would. In fact, many of them are very technologically incompetent or ignorant because it's almost like they had to deal with it so much growing up. They become an adult and they just let it go and they don't want to deal with that anymore. And we always talk about how we, get overstimulated with things and we just want to just relax and just step back because we're sick of the stimulation. The world is different, people are different, and people deal with things in different ways. And we have to understand how that's going to happen, how that's going to work, which creates more work. It's like driving. And you got to drive defensively. You're not just driving your car for you. You've got to drive the car for the person next to you because you have no idea what they're going to be doing. So you've got to really pay attention and be aware of what's going on. And it's really crazy. It's weird on how you do that. And 9 times out of 10, we will fall into that anger part so easy, even though we probably should be a little more humble, be a little more merciful, a little more grace giving, right? But many of us are not that way. It's kind of nuts. Things are changing, point of views are different. And how are you going to react with that? Again, it's the same thing when you talk politics or religion. There's always a fight about it because people seem to not being able to have just a conversation. I was actually talking to a professor, a teacher that was teaching an ethics class. And, it always changes. Sometimes they'll have very conservative students. Sometimes they'll have very liberal students. And every time you're always trying to have that conversation, you're trying to have the the good, not a bad conversation, but really trying to engage one another to listen, to have the right words to say. And he was talking about them coming in and then trying to have those good pieces, having the separate teams and them presenting their facts for this and that. But every once in a while, you would run into those that are very hard-headed, pig-headed, strong-willed. And you run into it on both sides. It doesn't matter if you're liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat. I don't care. There's always going to be somebody that is just very strong-willed about where they stand and what they do. And the funny thing is, they're not going to listen, which is funny because it ended up turning into a very bad thing. There was no way that they could have a very good debate with the topic that they were dealing with, to the point that he had actually talked to the student after class, and they had the meeting and kind of put things on the table. And of course, the student just said, this is what it is, and kind of put it out there. And then the professor looked at him and said, well, now wait a minute. The way you're acting, aren't you acting the exact same way that you think they are? So you're being very closed-minded. You're not being open-minded. You're not able to have a conversation. You're not able to actually debate, because for you, it's your way or the highway. It's the way you think, and everybody needs to think the way you do, and nothing else matters. Okay? I've been down that road. I've done it, especially when I was younger. Well, see, that's not where we are, because we have to find that common road. Where can we come together to support one another, to help one another? Again, not looking at our differences, but looking at our similarities. None of us are going to agree with things 100% of the time, because we're not the same. Our emotions are different. Our logic is different. The way we think, the way we act, our personalities are different. So it's how we are able to bring those together so we can do our job, so we can get things taken care of. We see it in the government, how nobody gets along because they are so isolating on both sides. Yeah, it's frustrating, and you don't really know what to do. I was this weekend, and my dad's Roku kind of took a dump, so I had to go and find a new one. And of course, where I went, they didn't have one, and I had to get him something else. So then I spending the rest of the weekend kind of getting him to the new platform that he's using and trying to get things figured out so he understands how to use it. And he watches this particular program, which just drives me insane, because they push anger so much because of what they do, what they say, and it's not talking about coming together in love and in understanding. Like I talked at the beginning of Ephesians 4, when it's saying that we need to be eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. We don't think about the peace. We don't think about the gentleness. We don't think about the patience. We don't think about the humility. We don't think about loving one another and being there for each other to help them so they can be the best that they can be, to really pick them up when they fall down. A lot of times they will fall down and they'll kick, and they'll keep them down, or they'll knock them down and kick them down, because that's not how they want to get along. Ephesians 4. Read that. How does it help you? How does it help you understand life, to do better in life, to really help others as they are doing things in life for them? And always check it out. Again, your point of view, my point of view, your personality, my personality, they're different. But how can we come together in that common ground so we can build upon that and really strengthen one another to help each other be the best that we can be, right? Ephesians 4, check it out. If you enjoyed this, be sure to share it with others. You can do that on social media, as well as really giving me a rating on the platform that you're listening. That's always a help. Find me on social media and all the crazy things that I usually end up sharing on pretty much whatever it is. If you look up My Buddy Jimmy, you're going to find it either Facebook, Threads, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I don't know. There's so many anymore. I can't even keep track. And there's probably others that I'm on that I don't even remember, but things still get posted on them. It's crazy. You can also check things out at mybuddyjimmy.com. But, thanks so much for listening. And again, where are you and how are you dealing with life? And are you going through always angry and complaining and just not wanting to get along? Or are you trying to do your best to get along with others and to help them be the best that they can be, training them to be the best that they can in what that they're doing so they can be successful, so you can be successful. Thank you for listening to The Gospel Road. Have a great day. God bless.
Spinal adjustments provided by Dr. Chad Rolfson. The Spinal Tuning Chiropractic Center is a Des Moines area low flat fee per month unlimited chiropractic care practice. When life happens, just adjust. Schedule today at spinaltuning.com.
If you're looking for help with software, app, web development, be sure to check out my friends at ingenuitycompany.com. They believe in their clients. Software development, app development, web development, visioning, design thinking, diagramming, organizational development, strategy. They can help you at the Ingenuity Company. Find out more at ingenuitycompany.com.
The Jimmy Olsen Radio Network.